Hi. In this episode of our rhythm tutorial, I want to talk about one question only, and that is, how do I find the one in music? It's not like about life, but that's a mystery to many of the students who are starting to learn about rhythm, and maybe we're able to identify the beat in the music sort of intuitively. We feel where the pulse is, but where is the one? How do we find out where to start counting? The theory is that we have the pulse that goes on forever, and the pulse is grouped into bars or measures. And typical groupings would be, for example, groups of 4. And we can go 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or maybe another typical grouping would be in 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, etc. Could be in 5, could be in 7, but the most frequent to find is a group of 4. So we know the theory, but how does it apply to the actual music? The first approach, if we do not know any theory, we do not know anything about the genre of music that we listen to, the first approach is just to play the music, move to it intuitively to try and identify the beat, and then also physically and intuitively see where is the heaviest pulse in that cycle of beats. Where is the most weight and the most groundedness, sort of. And that should be the one. Now, in some styles of music, it's quite easy to find the one, and in some styles, it's actually considered more interesting if we try to hide the one a little bit, if it's not as clear. And in some styles of music, it may be so complex and so confusing that it may not be clear at all where the one is. Maybe even musicians would start arguing. That I'm sure is the exception. Like the vast majority of grooves is quite clear about where the one is. But I'm saying this to encourage you to stick with music that you find easy to understand for now, because it's a lot about listening experience, and the more listening experience you have and the more you know what to search for in the overall sound of the recording, the easier it will be to identify the one. Okay, this tutorial would be much more satisfying if I could just play a lot of tunes from Spotify and we could go through it together. But I cannot do that for copyright reasons. I don't want to violate anybody's copyrights. So I'm using some groove loops, which is less satisfying, but I hope it's good enough to make the point. Let's start with like a funky groove, okay? So it will sound like this. Okay, first of all, I'm going to try and find the beat. I do this just by sort of like dance into it, what feels best, right? So this is the beat. Now I need to know where is the heaviest, the most grounded pulse, and to me that is here. That would be the one, right? So I will count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? If you feel confident about the one, if you found it in the music, I think it's a great idea to keep listening to the music and to reflect what is it in the music that makes you feel that this is the one. What is it that made you understand this is the one? Or that where the beat is, in fact. Many times you will find a cue in the bass line. Here is something like so what we have is a bass line that leads up to the one, which is one of my favorite things to talk about. The one is actually not the starting point. It's many times something that we go to. It's not the end of something. It's not the beginning of something, and the four is the end. It's an endless cycle. And in this case, the bass line leads up to the one. Okay. Another thing that is many times in pop or jazz music is that on the 2 and the 4 in the bar, we have some sort of a high sound in the drum set. Maybe what we call a rim shot on the side of the snare. Or just a snare drum sound, a small drum. Right? So those would be the 2 and the 4. They would not usually be the 1. Okay? So let's listen again to this music. I don't know if it carries on the video, but maybe you can identify these elements. This would be the backbeat, the 2 and the 4, the loud higher note on the snare drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. I already know this cannot be the 1 because it's the 2 and the 4, right? 2. So here's the bass line. That's how I know my 1. 2, 3, 4. Etc. etc. Okay, let's try a different style of music. Let's take let's take the good old swing. Again, I try to identify the beat first. This could be a bit confusing because the bass plays the half notes. Maybe you think the beat is here. It could be a way to hear it, but with the theoretical knowledge that I have, I know it's here. And if there was a piano and more of the band actually playing, it would be more clear. Okay? So, where is the 1? To me, it will be here. One, two, three, four, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 4, etc. I was counting the bars now, that may be a bit confusing. This example may not be as satisfying because without maybe a melody or the piano accompaniment, it's a bit harder to hear it. It's a bit harder to hear the harmonic development, for example, which we don't have to understand analytically, but intuitively it helps us a lot to hear the harmonies because they also create tension and release, and it usually helps us. What we can see here also on the 2 and the 4, we have a high-pitched sound in the drum set. That's very, very typical. I'm sure you have heard that the snaps that we usually do to a jazz tune would be on the 2 and the 4. So if you identify those, naturally the 1 will not be there. That eliminates half of the options. So again, this would be hopefully intuitively, you can find intuitively. Maybe one last example. This would be a nice example. Let's see. Just the bass now. Very famous melody, all blues. Without a drum set, it may be kind of difficult to find the beat now. There clearly is a heaviness in the phrasing. Not now so much, but here. I would hear is this. So we have 3/4 bar now. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. This is an example, a very good example of how the theoretical way to talk about music can be negotiable. Is that a word? It may not always be so clear. For example, in this loop, I have good reasons to count this as 3 beats to each bar. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. However, I could also very well argue that there is 6 to a bar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we can discuss this forever. There's the truth of the sheet music. I think this song is actually written in 6. That's not important to us as we dance. It's just the truth is in the listening, right, and in the feeling. And it's easy to jump from counting to 3 to counting in 6 if we know what it is we're talking about. And the 1 will always be in the same spot. Etc., etc. Okay. Again, I wish we could go through some real examples, but it's a great thing that you can do just in your everyday life. If you have a nice playlist on your mobile phone, or you put Spotify on or something, and as you do the dishes, you can just try and identify where's the 1, and your listening experience will grow rapidly. And with more knowledge of the different genres, it will also be more easy for you to identify where the 1 is. There's a few styles that are a bit different. For example, in a samba, in a samba batucada, sometimes we may have a higher bass drum on the 1 and a lower bass drum on the 2, which is reverse to what we intuitively know from most of the Western pop music. We would usually think of the low note as being the 1. Low note being on the 1. Whereas in the samba, sometimes with how the sordos act together, we might have the higher bass note on the 1. Etc. And this comes with listening experience. I hope this was helpful. It's a vast issue, but things get much easier with listening.